I had this conversation. You were late on this one.
Oh, right.
It wasn't intentional, Pippa, but it just so happened that all the men was they kind of shied away from this conversation. So yeah, let them. they can sit in the back seat and watch this one. And for sure, I'll be getting messaging through going, oh my gosh, I wish I was on this one to say. No, too late, sorry. Cool. Let's go. Right, so we are live on YouTube. Hello and welcome to another episode of Jay's Big Chat with me, your host, Jermaine, aka Jay. And joining me, I've got a very special panel discussing a massive topic that is narcissists. So would you like to just tell everyone who you are, and let's dive straight in. If we start with, can everyone see, if you see the screen? Let's start with you, Pippa.
Okay, hi YouTube, I'm Pippa. I'm 30 years old. I live in London, England, and I am a high school teacher. I am on Instagram as Sober Pippa because I gave up drinking almost 10 months ago. So that is a little bit about me.
Nice. Anyone else jump in? Let's go.
Oh, okay, my name's Lorraine. I'm a registered social worker. I'm 27, and my name on Instagram is Lorraine XO. That's what I'm gonna say.
Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm a primary school teacher, full-time and part-time designer. My name on Instagram is Adina Rose London, which is ACO.
Very nice to meet you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cordelia. I am 30 years old and I live in the United States. By day, I am an attorney. Currently, I am an in-house counsel for a corporation in America. Previously, I've been a prosecutor as well as I worked at a nonprofit helping low-income victims get orders of protection and restraining orders. On Instagram, you can find me at Codependent Recovery. I also have a podcast, We Healed Together, and I have a workbook that I wrote, Let's Heal Together, the Breakup Edition, for anybody going through a breakup or divorce.
Brilliant. Thank you for joining us. Last but not least.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adriana. I am 32. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I'm a life coach who helps people recover from narcissistic abuse and heal from chronic pain with the mind-body connection, because a lot of the pain has to do with, you know, the trauma that has been caused from narcissistic abuse. So making that discovery for me was absolutely mind-blowing. So I have used my own personal experience with being raised by a narcissistic mother and having, you know, more narcissistic relationships than I'm proud to admit. So I've learned a lot and I've healed from it. So now I'm here to empower other people to also heal. And you can find me on Instagram at Let's Get Your Shift Together. I also have a podcast called The Shift Show.
Brilliant. Welcome, guys. Honestly, thank you very much for joining me on this one. Adriana, actually, I was watching, it was your live that I was watching when you were discussing sort of this topic. And it was, you know what, it was actually late night and I clicked onto it just out of pure curiosity. But it was such an interesting topic to hear people's, you know, the questions that they were asking, and of course, your own personal experiences. And as you kept mentioning, you know, a lot of it was to do with you being a coach and, you know, so many people that you've spoken to and so forth. And then I sort of started digging around and I realized, oh my days, like this is an absolutely massive, massive topic. And it's one that sometimes can be sort of overlooked. So yeah, I'd literally just want to dive straight in, like with the big words, like a narcissist. I mean, how, like, what does, when you hear that word, like, what does that bring to mind? Like, what is that?
My mother.
Same, my mum too.
In what way? Like what are some of the traits of a narcissistic person?
God. I'll let you go first. Go on, I'll let you go first.
He's going.
They lack empathy.
Yeah.
They have to be right.
Yeah, there's a lot of entitlement as well.
Yeah. So is this because before today, you know, I was told, oh, maybe it's you can label someone with this title, and they may not necessarily be a narcissist. So is there a, do you know what I mean? Is there a thin line in your experience and everything else? Is there a thin line between a narcissistic person or just a unpleasant person?
When you say a linked line, are you between a narcissist person and a very unpleasant person?
Yeah.
Are you talking about in terms of, how can I put it now? I lost my train of thought now. It will come back to me.
Just in terms of their, I guess, their personality or how they are as a person.
I think a nasty person has a characteristic of being a nasty person. And I think a nasty person, sometimes based on their situational circumstances, it makes them nasty. But I think in general, a narcissist person, to me, and what I've experienced, they don't have much control over certain things. They can't, yeah? Do you understand?
Okay. Are we seconding that? What are we saying?
I was just gonna add that I think that a lot of people nowadays, like, not to just broadcast and generalize everything, but I feel like I hear the word narcissist a lot, just in everyday conversation where, I don't know, it's almost taken a form as an insult. And so I do think it's important to differentiate between, like, are we talking about a narcissistic, somebody who has narcissistic traits, which every human being, first of all, has those to some degree, but the normal population just doesn't have it to that degree. But I think it's important to differentiate because narcissistic personality disorder is a personality disorder, and it's an actual, mental illness with a diagnostic criteria. And so I just bring that up because I do feel like that word is kind of tossed around, and I don't know, I would love to hear y'all's perspective because I feel like I don't know, it's almost like an insult now where just so often I do hear people say, oh, he or she is so narcissistic. And I think it's just important to think about going into the conversation that we kind of set that up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think there's a big difference between someone who's just a jerk versus an actual narcissist. Because everyone has bad days. There's times where, like, I've done things and said things that I'm not proud of course, but it doesn't necessarily make them a narcissist. But I think the reason that we're seeing the word more often, and it might seem like it's a buzzword, is because more and more people are starting to wake up to narcissistic abuse because it's so taboo, it's so swept under the rug. And there is that fear of, like, what if I'm calling somebody a narcissist and they're not actually a narcissist? And the way I see it is, I don't think it's that harmful to think that someone's a narcissist when they're not, versus not having the facts out there for survivors to be able to read and be able to do research and be able to determine for themselves if someone that they are with is actually emotionally abusing them. And the other thing with narcissists is that they don't get diagnosed. So yeah, there is this whole diagnostic criteria and everything, but someone who's a narcissist, they think they're perfect. They don't think anything is wrong with them. So they're not going to say, like, oh, it seems like the way I'm treating people is not so great, so maybe I should go get checked out by a psychiatrist. That's never, ever going to happen. So I think it's important that, the signs are out there and people are aware that, this is a form of abuse. And, if people get mislabeled as a narcissist, I think, like, it just kind of is what it is. And it's better that the information's out there and people are able to see the facts and see the information so that they can get out of a potentially dangerous situation.
Okay. And obviously using that word like dangerous, how dangerous, you know, if there is a spectrum, you know, this a narcissistic person, you know, what level of, when you use the word dangerous, how dangerous can they actually be?
I mean, so it depends on the extent of the abuse, right?
Yeah,
like
I mean,
some of them can become violent.
Yeah, I mean, feel free, anyone, to again shed light on any personal experiences, or use, and I put in quotation, someone told me, or a friend, or whatever it is. But I mean, if you'd like to give some examples of certain situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like they can definitely get violent. And then the people who are being abused by them, like their self-esteem is so shattered that they can start having like thoughts where like they just don't want to be here anymore and whatnot, right? So it is, in my opinion, a pretty dangerous situation, because just the effect that it has on you emotionally and mentally is it can cause you to like go through, you know, having, you know, bad strategies of coping, right? Like for me, I had years of chronic pain, and that brought me to my knees. And that was a result of all my repressed emotions from my childhood and whatnot, right? There's people who, you know, unfortunately, they commit suicide because they can't handle the pain and all that kind of stuff. So, and people who stay in relationships where, you know, they might be being financially abused, and whatever that person, a narcissist, their ultimate goal is to have control over another person, right? So there's nothing necessarily safe about that in general. Whether they want to have control over the person's mind, over their body, over, you know, what they do with their life, like it's not a good situation, and people need to get out of those situations as soon as possible.
Yeah. You look like you want to say something, Lorraine.
I've got so much to say, but I just don't know where to begin.
Go on, just go.
Oh God, I mean, there's so many forms of different narcissists, isn't there? There's the grandiose. I can't remember exactly the types, but I remember doing like a massive dissertation on it in uni, and I remember going through like all the different types, and you know, red flags of someone that's a narcissist, and reasons to why they're like that. You know, it could be childhood, could be whatever they're going through at the time, or it could be just wanting control over someone. But what is the actual question that what we're talking about now? We're just doing anything.
I mean, yeah, I mean, chuck through whatever you want, really. But if you've got any experiences, any stories, you know, just trying to understand.
Yeah, I mean, like in my experience, I've had narcissistic people in my life, and they like to gaslight you. They like you to think like a certain way. They want you to believe that you've done this wrong, and if you call them out on their stuff they've done wrong, then they want you to believe, no, I never did that, you did that. And they almost make you think you're crazy, because you know, you can be a nice person, but when it comes to people disrespecting you, you have to call them out on it. And then when you call them out on it, it's, oh, I never did that, you're crazy, you've made that up. And that is a massive trait of a narcissist. They like to gaslight you, make you believe the fantasy that's not true. And in romantic relationships, usually at the beginning, they're very full on, they're very, you know, I make out this big palaver that everything's perfect, that we'll like run off into the sunset together, when in reality they're probably the complete opposite, and they just want to get you like right where they can have you. And that's just on the romantic side of things. But friendships or family members that have been in my life, I don't know, that's a whole nother topic, but you know, you get the gist. Yeah, what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
well, like because you mentioned like red flags and stuff. Is there actually a point in which you can actually identify, you know, a narcissist?
Yeah,
I think that you can, because I'm just looking at a list here of different traits in front of me.
Yeah. And
I would probably categorize myself as like falling under some of these. So, for example, nobody likes to take nobody likes to take criticism. I don't think, like, as human beings, that we want to take criticism when we're criticized, and I often am, as part of my job as a teacher. Debbie, you're probably the same. You've been observed and you have feedback, and I think in most jobs you're not going to find that too comfortable. But if you fall into like one of these categories, that doesn't automatically make you a narcissist is it a combination of several of them as a, you know, to be the perfect definition?
Yeah.
Or is it like how many, you know, I suppose if you're, Adriana, doing the coaching, you'd find, you know, your clients might tick more than one box. Am I right? And then you'd kind of have that bracket or that diagnosis. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I
It wasn't very helpful what I said. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
No. I don't coach like actual narcissists to like not be narcissists anymore, because like they're not going to go out of their way to like pay somebody to help them with anything because they think they're perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I coach like survivors of narcissistic abuse.
Yeah,
so,
okay,
you know,
sorry. Yeah.
That's all, it's all good. Yeah. But like everyone does have traits, right? And like you say about criticism, like no one like openly says like, oh, please criticize me. Like,
No.
please, like bring it on, right? But when a narcissist gets criticized, they're like the rage turns on and they get really nasty, or, you know, they'll try and like throw it back onto you and tell you that you're the one who is crazy, you're the one who like misinterprets stuff, you're too sensitive, etc. So it's normal to have these tendencies.
But I do that. I get really angry if I'm, you know, like my mum, like, or my family, you know, and it might be something really minor, and I take absolutely no guilt for that. I'm not guilty. I'm not the one that did that. I'm not the one that said that. You're wrong.
If you actually didn't
admit on YouTube,
if you actually didn't do what they're accused of, then of course, right? Like that doesn't make you narcissistic.
But it might take me a day to come round and then say, actually, do you know what? That was me. I was the guilty party, and I'm sorry. But in the moment,
come around though.
Yeah, you like just see red. So I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So is that the difference? Is that the difference then in terms of
being able to apologize?
Yeah.
Yeah, being able to take accountability for things narcissists can't really do. Like, I've got an ex from 5 years ago who will never admit to the things that he did 5 years ago. He still will lie to me in my face. But I know, you know, when you've had plain evidence, but they don't want to ever admit the truth because they want that control of you. They want that, you know. So
does that mean, go on Deborah, and then I'll go.
I'm just kind of going off course. I am recently divorced. I've been divorced just about a month now. And I'm not going to label that person as a narcissist, but I felt at the time when I was in the marriage that he was a very nasty, aggressive person. But I never ever labeled him as a narcissist. I more labeled him as a sociopath. It's only since I've been separated and out of that relationship and really looking at myself and my contribution to this relationship and how he's behaved to certain situations, like Adriana was saying, you know, never ever wrong. He is right. He was right for every single thing. He'd belittle me and make me feel, and I don't think I'm that person now. Jay would tell you I was a very confident, bubbly person.
Yeah.
He pulled me down to such a level that I just totally hated myself. Everything about myself, I hated. I felt that I couldn't do anything right. Felt the way I looked, I didn't look right. It was really depressing. And it's only since I've been out of that relationship and I had to go and seek counseling for myself because I felt myself crumbling to the ground. And being on lockdown as well and still having to work and still having to teach on Google Classrooms and everything, it was really, really depressing me. But I'm very good at covering things up. And I decided I needed to go and get help for myself, else I'd be no use to it, which I did. And I had to go and seek counseling, and I was in therapy and getting to understand. And it was more, I wanted to just find out about me. What was wrong about me? Why I felt the need to allow this person to treat me the way that he did. So there's something wrong with me. Away from the fact that there was something wrong with him, there is definitely something wrong with me as well, because I accepted the fact that he belittled me and talked to me horrible and he treated me like scum. But on the flip side of that, if he went anywhere, you'd never know. Would you, Jay?
No, not at all. Not at all.
No, like anything.
Not at all. From the outside, looks hunky dory.
Yeah, it looks perfect, but in the inside, behind closed doors, it was an absolute nightmare. You know?
Actually, I identify with what you're saying so much, because
Yeah.
I am going through a divorce right now with somebody that I will label as a narcissist. And I will say I wanted to put a little point on my almost ex-husband and I went to couples counseling together. So I wanted to address that is one way that a medical professional could potentially observe. When we were in counseling together, the counselor recommended that, or actually, I'm sorry, the counselor said that he had to read a book. It's that book by Lundy Bancroft called Why Does He Do That? Inside the Mind of Angry and Controlling Men. So that was like the first red flag of, oh wow, I'm really with an abusive person here.
Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of what you said about how from the outside nobody could really tell, and just eventually you started to hate yourself. I mean, I literally identify with that so much. So I'm actually just got married to him in January. I'm sorry, December. So very quick marriage. We had been together for like 3.5 years, but then we got married. And I actually, on my Instagram, I've shared like some of the wedding pictures, and I did of myself saying like, don't believe social media. And this is actually what was going on inside. And from the outside, it's like this beautiful, happy person who's getting married to seemingly the love of their life. And even though it was a short marriage, I mean, just the fact that I feel like I was able to pull myself out of it and be strong enough to eventually walk away. I will say, like, I was literally at rock bottom. Like, I was so sad. And I'm not saying it in like an attention seeking way. Like, I really hated myself.
Genuinely,
yeah, like I was blamed for everything. Everything was my fault. And to, you know, everyone was, or we were talking earlier about gaslighting. I really felt like I was going crazy because it was like, you know, we got married and then on our honeymoon, for starters, so this is literally in this year, he threatened to headbutt me until my nose bled. This is on our honeymoon. And wow. I remember contacting my parents and just reaching out to them and being like, I feel like I made a really big mistake. And a lot of me was struggling with feeling very codependent. Like a lot of, I recognized in therapy and working through this, in this experience, that I am codependent and that's something that I'm healing from and recovering from. But I was accepting that behavior and I was really like, I should have literally just left on my honeymoon. Like I still stayed with him for, you know, at least a few months after he said that to me. And there's something about just, you know, where I was really thinking like, what will everybody think? Well, I just got married. But then, you know, there's all these pressures of when we first got together for like the first 7 months, we were super happy, never fought. And I remember it was almost like I was chasing that love bombing, like that phase of, oh, like I'm sure like things will settle down. Once we got engaged, it was okay, well, we're just stressed because of the wedding. Like I'm sure once we get married, things will eventually get back there. And I'm constantly chasing this thing that doesn't exist. And it took a very long time for me to realize like the narcissist is who they are past that phase. Like that initial phase isn't real. And it's really from when that phase ends onward is who that person is. And so I just, sorry, that was kind of a long rant, but
oh no,
I just feel like you said about divorce, because I really want whoever is listening to feel empowered. Like, I don't care if you got married yesterday, like one day ago, if somebody is treating you badly, leave them. Like,
Exactly.
100% walk away, because anyone who loves you, like everyone that I've told, everyone that I've opened up to and shared my story with, there's not a single person, like, it's all in your head. Nobody's gonna judge you. Nobody's
Yeah.
gonna be like, oh my God, you just got married. Everyone is gonna just hug you and be like, I'm so proud of you. And you know, I think I'll let somebody else take over, but the last kind of little point I wanted to make was that I think if you're like listening to this and you're wondering, is this person a narcissist or not? Who cares? If you have a gut feeling that they are treating you crappy and you don't feel good and you're starting to dislike yourself and you're starting to feel crazy, like this person's making you feel bad about yourself, healthy relationship, you shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't feel bad about yourself. I remember at the end feeling like I was taking antidepressants and that was being used against me to make me feel crazy. Like, are you off your medicine? Are you just off your meds? And it's like, no, first of all, I'm pretty sure I need these because you make me really depressed.
Yeah.
And second of all, this has nothing to do with that.
Can I just ask a quick question on the incident about headbutting your nose until it bled? Like, was that ever addressed like later on by him or apologized or anything?
So no, in the divorce, interestingly, he responded to, so in America, they have this thing called like discovery, where you can send out requests for admission. And so basically the other person has to respond. So one thing I will say that I did, and whoever is listening, feel free to like steal this tip. My counselor caught on before I did that I was being gaslighted. Like, just in one session, she's like, Cordelia, I don't think it's possible that you're 100% wrong 100% of the time. So why don't you start recording conversations? So if you have like an iPhone or whatever phone, literally take out your phone and like put on voice memos. I started doing that and just like recording conversations.
Yeah.
And so when he threatened me on our honeymoon, I recorded it and I told him, like, I have it on recording. So in the lawsuit, or not the lawsuit, the divorce, when he was sent a request for admission that basically said, hey, you threatened to headbutt your newlywed wife until her nose bled, I'm gonna like pull it out and just read it to you, because it's
sure
it's not even, it's a very narcissistic answer.
I mean, this is real life, so this is definitely good stuff for sure.
I mean, somebody wants to oh, here they are, tune in. So he said, sorry, I'm just scrolling to the right one.
Sorry.
So it says, admit that on your honeymoon you screamed at plaintiff the following statement: straighten the fuck up before you get hurt. Sorry if we're not supposed to cut.
No, that's fine. No, go. Yeah.
His response was, admit that this statement as referenced here has been taken out of context and occurred after hours of harassment by the plaintiff, and plaintiff being guilty of physical abuse, mental abuse, and verbal abuse. And then the next says, admit that on your honeymoon you screamed at plaintiff the following statement, quote, I will headbutt you until your nose bleeds if you don't straighten up. And he said, admit to the extent that I made that statement but did not scream after hours of harassment by the plaintiff, and plaintiff being guilty of abuse. So it's like a very narcissistic thing of being like, well, yeah, I did those horrible things, but you made me do it.
Right, okay.
But also the fact that he would even try to get out of it in any way, and you had it recorded. Can I ask, this you don't have to share, but like, did you block his number? Because I know as part of getting out of a narcissistic relationship, the advice is to end all contact, like mutual friends that you have in common, not to have contact with them, etc.
100%. Yeah, I actually changed my entire number.
Oh, good. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I changed it, and I will say, like, I want to preface to anybody who's listening and struggling, and they're like feeling like I can't go no contact with this person, like it feels impossible. I just want to let people know I've been there, and like you don't just start off like, I don't want to represent that I just like woke up like this the day after filing for divorce and was like, oh, I feel great and I'm amazing. I want everyone to understand, like, it was I went through a very, very low point, and I would characterize, like, I have so much compassion for the state of mind that I was in. So I don't want to judge how I was. Like, I don't want to label it as being weak because I just wasn't in a good state of mind. But I do want to own up to like toxic things that I did, such as, I mean, I was begging him to like work things out. And I was, so essentially before I filed for divorce from him, there was also periods while we were married, just in the short time of silent treatment, like he would disappear for 2 days. And he would disappear for a week, but then it would all be my fault. And it was like, I was not in a good place mentally. I was begging this person, saying things like, please, we're married. Please don't, I love you. Please don't do this. And like, it breaks my heart to think about how I was begging somebody who didn't treat me well and didn't respect me. And it, you know, in a lot of ways, I don't know. I just say all that to say, I know how it is to be at like your lowest low and to feel like it is absolutely impossible to like not text this person. But you'll time, like, it sounds so cliche, but with time,
of course,
like, there is like a neurological they say that studies and research have shown that breakups are like addiction, divorces are like addiction, and especially with a narcissist, it's like withdrawal. It is like coming off a drug. And it sounds horrible, but when you're reaching out to that person, it really is almost like you're going for that hit of like, okay, just like abuse me, and like I want to beg you to be with me, and then when we reconcile, that like gives me that high. And it's just that cycle that you are addicted to. Like, you don't actually want to talk to that person. It will get better. Going no contact will save your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's definitely so much real hearing a live, and you know, thank you very much for sharing, because that is definitely more powerful than any sort of thing that I was expecting. So definitely thank you for that. And it's, you know, it's definitely a testimony, isn't it? Because unfortunately, there are individuals who don't make it out alive. There are individuals who are still in that sort of situation, because either they're afraid to label the individual as narcissist, or even dare to even question it. So I mean, and that's this is your ex-husband. I know, you know, you mentioned, I think 2 people mentioned about like parents and friends as well. So this is not just a male or female thing, is it? It's across the board, right?
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to be taking up too much.
No, go talk. That's it. Yeah.
When Cordelia said about, in terms of talking about going to counselling, when I recognised that something was wrong, and I suggested to the other party for us to go to counselling, and his response to me was, if you love me, you'd never mention counselling to me again. So I never did. And in terms of what Cordelia was saying about, for me, when I started going counselling, and I shared it with him, and I told him, and I wanted him to know I was going counselling because I'm depressed. But his response when he got angry was, all that money you're spending on counselling, it's not doing any good to you. Counselling to me again. That's the response that I had from him. And some people, there's just no helping them, especially if they don't recognise that there is an issue with them. He always saw it as everything that went wrong, every single thing that went wrong was me. And one day I sat down and I said, I need to talk to you. I said to him, can you identify anything in our marriage that you have done wrong? And he said to me, no, he's never done anything wrong in this marriage.
Wow, that's a bold statement, isn't it? I mean, gosh.
Me, and he threatened to kill my children, and he wished me dead. And like Cordelia, a friend of mine said, start recording him, because domestic abuse, especially when it's not physical, is emotional abuse, is very, very hard to prove. Start recording him. And I started recording him, and I would have the phone in front of him recording him, but it didn't stop him from saying anything. On one of the recordings, he even said, and that's for your effing tape. So he saw that I was recording it.
Yeah.
The good thing about it is, now the position where he is now, he got arrested in May because he pushed my daughter. And the Monday was the bank holiday, so I couldn't do anything. And in my mind, the only thing I wanted to do was to get a non-molestation order against him so he couldn't come anywhere near me. So I had to wait for the bank holiday Monday to go. Then I started the proceedings on the Tuesday. And do you know that he went online on the Tuesday and filed for divorce? And the divorce, what he petitioned was that he cannot be, and this is the exact words, because I just memorized it. I cannot be expected to live with my wife anymore because my wife has physically and verbally abused me.
Oh my gosh.
So when it was to get to the divorce, I just signed the paper because I wasn't going to be paying money just to debate wording, because I know what happened, you know. So let's just get the divorce done then. So now he's happy because he's filed for divorce. So he's going around saying, and I've heard, oh, I've divorced her. I've divorced her. We've had court hearings, and he's telling the judge, this is one of the reasons why I've had to divorce her. I've had to divorce her. And I thought, okay, he's divorced me. And he is where he is now, and I'm getting on with my life.
Yeah. Well done, you. I mean, because otherwise, if you argue that with him, you're just giving him the power again. Because constantly, if you're having that debate, I divorce you, you divorce me, what's, you know in your heart what happened, and you go away and you start to recover knowing the truth, and he can be miserable.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Of course.
And one last thing that Adriana was saying, I started to suffer with such excruciating pain from my head go down to my feet. And I didn't know what it was. My joints were aching me, my stomach, I was constipated, I had back pain, I had constant headaches, I couldn't remember things. I was teaching and I'd stop in mid-flow. Like even now, sometimes I want to say something, but my mind was so full, it just couldn't come to the forefront of what I wanted to say. And it's only through counselling, my counsellor said to me, your brain is like a computer. You've got so many things in it. You know, when you open up a computer, if you've got so many things on your heart, on your desktop or whatever, it takes your computer a bit longer to load, doesn't it?
Of course, yeah.
That's exactly what was happening with my brain. I had so much going on in my head. I couldn't get things to come to the forefront of my brain. It was absolutely awful. It was an awful time of my life, but and I'm still going through it now because I'm just freshly divorced, and this is May. But I'm learning to love me again, and I'm learning to build myself up, and to just, as far as I'm concerned, it's my journey now. It's my new journey. That chapter has closed, and that chapter had to happen in my life for me to be where I am now.
Yeah, true.
That's what I'm looking at.
Woo!
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so awesome.
Celebrations. I mean, so it's clear that narcissists can't change, or they won't change. They can't change.
I think they can.
I think they can too.
With help, with therapy, and with identifying that there is an issue and there's a problem, I think they can.
Okay.
They have to want to.
Adriana, you were saying, because
sorry, there must be so many reasons why they have that trait in the first place. So if you're deciding that if you're narcissist and you can change, and you both said that they can, then does the change or what's required depend on why it started? Does that make sense? So like, it will have the change, or what causes the change to happen will be surely determined by what caused the narcissism in the first place, right?
Yeah, I think they have to first identify and address that there was a problem but it could be, these ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. A lot of people go through that and they don't get the help, so they go into adulthood with these traumas.
Well, I think one of the things that I definitely took from Adriana's live last week was, a lot of people were saying, well, can they change? Can they change? And even I was asking, can a narcissist change? And I remember, Adriana, you were saying, like, my gosh, like you would hope so, but you just don't have any faith that they would.
No,
I mean, what?
I know, like, people want to have that hope that they might, and maybe they could, and maybe, like, they'll see what they did wrong and they'll see how they hurt you and all that, but like, they won't, because their need to be right is stronger than like anything, right? So it's like they don't have the ability to look at themselves and admit that they made a mistake, or they behaved horrendously, or that they hurt somebody. It's always going to be, no, it was the other person's fault, they made me do this, they're wrong, there's nothing wrong with me, etc. And they're just not going to change. And it's just, in my opinion, not a thing that happens.
Are you saying they're not going to change, or they can't change?
Both. Both, because they have to want to change, right? And if you're dealing with a true narcissist, like, they will not want to change. They will continue wanting to make the other person wrong. The whole world is responsible for, why they are how they are. They're just like this eternal victim, and nothing's wrong with them. It's like this poor me, boo-hoo kind of thing. If, you even try and call them out on it and they try to like make it look like they care, it'll just turn into this whole, like, they're victimizing themselves. But that's another manipulation tactic. And a lot of them will actually agree to go to therapy, and they will actually bamboozle the therapist and convince the therapist and manipulate them. And then the therapist ends up taking the narcissist side, and that makes the survivor feel even more crazy. So honestly, like, just run. And whether or not they're capable of changing, like, don't even go there, because just run. And whatever the reason for their narcissism, whether it was adverse childhood experiences, or, they were just overindulged as children, and that's why they have that sense of entitlement, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. They're still being abusive. They're still being horrible to you. So why, like, don't hold out hope for them changing, is pretty much what I'm trying to say.
I feel like too, there's also a bigger issue of, like, you don't actually want to be with that person if you want them to change into another person, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Regardless of if they can change or not, it's like that person presently is not right for you. And I also think that, like, when you get into a relationship with a narcissist, for example, a lot of my underlying issues with codependency came out. I'm not saying that, like, abuse is never justified. Like, I'm not justifying any of that, but I am saying that my behavior, my codependent style in nature enabled the narcissist to the point of, like, I didn't have boundaries. I didn't have self-esteem. I didn't have any of those things. And so, like, if you get what I'm saying, like, what incentive is there for this person to change? Why should I want to be with him? All of those things.
Yeah.
But a narcissist as well, like a person with narcissistic personality disorder, typically there's usually a dual diagnosis. Like, there are a lot of common conditions associated with narcissistic personality disorder. For example, substance abuse, another personality disorder such as borderline. So they're often like, it's often not just narcissistic personality disorder all by itself. Like there's often other things going on. I will say, obviously, like I am a survivor of narcissistic abuse. I don't think that regardless of NPD or anything else, anybody with any kind of issue or mental health issue or substance abuse issue, no one is going to change because you're forcing them to. Like, you can't fix somebody else. So true change has to come within. But I do think that, like, I do think that narcissists, somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, I do think they can change if that change is inspired from within and not like they're not going to
influence. Yeah,
like they're not going just to appease you. They're going because they actually want help.
Well,
but I think that
by virtue of their character, they won't be able to come from within because they just can't look at themselves to make that choice. So like you said, with like addiction or other mental health illness, because of the nature of those, there is a potential for those like addicts or whatever to say, I have an issue, whereas a narcissist can't do that in the first place in order to get the help that they would then need.
So I double checked just like the medical research basically before the panel talk today. So I will say, like, I think some of the research is probably skewed because of what we're all saying, like how many narcissists actually come forward to be like, okay, I think I have all those. So I think the data is a little skewed, but of the people that have NPD, the research that they show is that individual psychotherapy is kind of the gold standard of treating somebody with that. And the research that I found said it typically takes over a year to actually see changes. So, I mean, I would say that we are all right to assume that the majority of narcissists won't change. But I think given the right combination, it would have to take somebody who's really committed to changing to change.
I mean, I was looking at some research, and of course, like, you know, we've identified that actually it's hard to spot you know, narcissists, and it's even harder to get out from within their grasp, right? So we're talking about change and we're talking about identifying traits and so forth. Obviously, when I was looking at some stories, individuals were saying, like, you know, even right up until, you know, their deathbed, like they still wouldn't admit, like they would take that to the grave, that they have not done anything wrong. And, you know, and for, especially if you're a victim, you then, because of course this person, whether it be a friend, a family member, a spouse, or whatever it is, you know, you've obviously created this connection with them, and because you like them, like, you know, so just because of this trait of theirs, obviously you pulled away, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you no longer have feelings for them, you know. So you would hope that they would change. But yeah, I mean, based on the stories that like personal stories that I've heard, and, you know, personal people that I know, I just think to myself, if I had those traits and really and truly I'm always winning, you know, unless I'm tied down, and even still, if you tie me down, I'm the victim now. Like you've now victimized me, or you're pressuring me, or you're forcing me to do something. So it's such a, based on what Adriana said, like it actually made me think to myself, like, honestly, like if a train is built to go on this particular track, you know, it's going to ride that track right up until the end of the line. And again, the studies show that, of course, especially if it's childhood trauma, you know, when you sort of get into your adult years, like you don't really change after that. You sort of like your post-teen years, like you don't really change. So whatever you kind of have going on beforehand, you know, it's very, very hard, especially this trait to shift. I mean, I would hope, because of course the world would be a much better place. Again, Adriana, you put some stats forward about the amount of narcissists that I think it was like a percentage of people who would meet in our lifetime. And I think you gave the stats of the amount of people that we would come in contact with. Like 10,000, is it?
Yeah, I literally, so the stats, which I don't think are a reflection of reality whatsoever. Like, so they say that it's 1% of the population that has narcissistic personality disorder, right? I don't believe that. I think it's way higher, but who am I? But based on 1%, right? 1%, how many people do we meet in our lifetime? So I Googled that, and that's 10,000. So if you're not living in a little remote village or, you know, somewhere that you don't meet a lot of people, you're meeting 10,000 people throughout your life. That's 100 narcissists. And those 100 narcissists are going to have a bigger impact on your life if you are susceptible to narcissistic abuse. And they pick people out. They pick people out who have codependency traits. They pick people out who are empathetic. They have that radar for who they can abuse, right? So they're not going to go to somebody who is confident in themselves and like knows where they stand, and they're going to, you know, just like immediately leave at the first sign of abuse, right? When there's people who, you know, have been through narcissistic abuse for the majority of their life, like they don't have that kind of like self-esteem that like most people have. So narcissists know how to pick that out. So those 100 people are going to make a bigger impact. So that is kind of an epidemic, because they're destroying people's lives. They're destroying your self-confidence, and it's a disaster. And just to go back to what you said, Jermaine, that narcissists will reach their deathbed without having any sort of coming to God. It is so true. My mother actually passed away in July of this year, and not like she apparently had dementia, because I was kind of like extremely low contact. So she was just in her own little world, but you know, nothing, no apology, no nothing like that. She died alone. She died a very miserable person, and she did that to herself, unfortunately. And, you know, there's nothing, I tried my darndest to help her, to get her to see her ways. And no, it just does not happen. And
so could we kind of like switch a little bit, just as we're kind of getting towards the last leg of it. So if we have to talk about, again, I guess family, you know, and with a spouse, with friends, you can kind of, not easily, but you can kind of go, all right, fine, see you later, I'm off, you know. You know, you can get your divorce, you can file your friendship divorce, or whatever it is. With parents, how different is it, you know? Because you can't just, you can walk away, but at the same time, you know, you have got that stronger, as it were, bond, isn't it, or sense of responsibility or something, to especially your mum or dad. Like, how different is it?
Should I come in?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. For me, I've always had a really difficult relationship with my mum. Like my entire life, it's just always been really difficult. And when I was younger, I lost my dad when I was about 8 years old, and then my mum, she struggled with, you know, being a single parent for a few years. And then when we were younger, she was very strict. She was very, you're not allowed to go out, you're not allowed to stay out, you have to stay in the house. Like, we weren't them kids that were allowed to just run along the road and go play out on your bike. We weren't allowed to do that. She was a very strict Catholic Filipino woman. Like, we had to always do what we were told. And if we rebelled, went out with our friends or stayed at someone's house, we would get like really badly beaten up and stuff. And then when my mum met my stepdad, when I was about 13 or 12, as soon as she met him, it was like, well, I think my mum has codependency issues. And I believe my mum is a narcissist. It's took me many years to realise that, but I do believe my mum's a narcissist. And when my mum finally found another man to sort of depend on, she just completely, it's like she forgot she had children. And me and my brother were always kicked out, you know, she put us into foster care. We were, as soon as she met him, it was like, sorry, I don't know what happened there.
No, go on.
I don't know what happened, it cut.
Yeah, are you back? Yeah, you're back.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, where was I?
Yeah, as soon as she met another man.
Yeah, so as soon as she met another man to like take the role as her husband, you would think, you know, maybe she wanted to find a man that would be a father figure to us. But she just, it's like she went from being a really strict mum, always wanting to know where we are all the time, always wanting us to be like a certain way, to literally just not giving a shit about us. Like, didn't care where we was, put us on to, you know, like family members, or just put us in foster care, put us in, it got to that point where we had to be in hostels and things like that. And then my mum didn't speak to me for years. So I see that silent abuse as like, you know, silent treatment is emotional abuse. And
so she chose not to speak to you.
Yeah, she chose not to speak to me, and she would tell all of our family and our friends it was because we rebelled. But my mum's version of us rebelling is literally doing what a normal teenager would do, stay at your friend's house, you know, just normal things. But because she just all of a sudden didn't have control over us, it's like she didn't give a shit. And then when she got married, they moved to another house, and she just wanted it to just be them two. And they literally live in like a 4 or 5 bedroom house. Me and my brother have been in multiple situations where we've needed somewhere to stay, but they just want it to be them two, because my stepdad's very much a narcissist as well. He's very controlling, very manipulative, makes you think you're always in the wrong. They've never ever apologized for anything they've done to me or my brother. My brother is so affected by this now. Like, if you were to speak to him, he's very much, he's in denial about the abuse, but he is so affected by it. But I don't know where I'm trying to go with this, but I just think a narcissist isn't just a spouse or a friend, it's 100% a parent. Like, and my mum, for example, I asked her a question at the beginning of the year, New Year's Day, and that question has led to her not answering my calls, not speaking to me for this whole year. We've had a whole pandemic, you know, all these things have happened this year. Not once has she picked up the phone to be like, are you okay? And she thinks by giving me this silent treatment that she's winning, but that's just a narcissistic trait. They have to gaslight you and make you think you're a certain way, and, you know, have that control over you. And it is hard to deal with. And as you become an adult, like, you know, we're adults, whatever, but having to realize this over the years, that actually it weren't me, it was my mum had issues growing up, and things that she's not actually spoken to me about, I've learned through the family. You know, she had a difficult childhood. She used to run away a lot, and she's never shared that with me. So where my mum can't apologize, can't take accountability for anything, she also can't face her past. And I feel like for a narcissist to change, you have to face every trauma you've ever experienced, because that's why you are the way you are, because of your trauma. And until my mum, I don't know, maybe if one day she seeked counselling or something, then maybe we could rebuild a relationship. But I just feel like it's so far gone, and it is quite sad. But I feel like Adriana said, my mum will probably take it to her deathbed the way she is. She'll never, ever apologise for how she treated me and my brother, ever. And my brother, he's very comfortable with like, okay, sorry, mum, yes, mum. He's very much like a people pleaser. And in some ways I am as well. Like, I went to uni to impress my mum, for her to speak to me again. She didn't speak to me for years. But as soon as she knew I was at uni, she wanted to speak to me again, you know, because she wants to portray this amazing image to the family. But I can't explain it. But
yeah,
it's just
no, I know what you mean, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a weird one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, narcissists, they come in all different forms, and unfortunately, like you said, you can get rid of a partner or a friend, but when it's your blood, it's like, what do I do? Because you feel guilty, because you know that's your mum. You want to, you know, but you're by allowing their behaviour, you're hurting yourself in the end. So what can you do, basically? Yeah.
I actually just want to jump in. Like, I don't know what you guys do in the States, but like a lot of adverse childhood trauma is addressed in schools. So I think there's a lot that's being done in the UK to support those kind of things, and I know that might go some way towards, you know, preventing possible personality traits developing in adult life. We talk about it so much at school, and particularly at the moment, they're treating COVID as a trauma at the moment for children. So we're doing loads of work around like feeling neglected during COVID. You know, in my school, the rate of domestic abuse has gone up because the families have been at home together for so long. So, I mean, that's just a small part of it. And if we're able to do anything, I don't know like how much you get that kind of stuff in America, but yeah, in the UK, we're trying to have a big push towards that.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, so is it just kind of a doomed situation? Because of course, if these traumas happen, you know, sort of in the early sort of childhood stage, and you sort of take that into your adulthood, so is the fix sort of as Pippa saying, like earlier on, or like what's our thoughts on that? Like, or is there no fix really?
I think you can heal at any stage of your life. And I'm talking about healing from narcissistic abuse, not from being a narcissist.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think I will ever be convinced that a narcissist can change unless I see like actual documentation of it or something.
Yeah.
But like for me, so for people who have been through narcissistic abuse and children who have been through like narcissistic parents and whatnot, like they obviously suffered trauma, right?
Yeah.
So, and they know better than to treat other people like shit just because they went through something, right? Like they become adults and they're like, okay, we know how to treat people, but you're still dying on the inside because of that unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
And for myself personally, I had no clue that I was even a trauma survivor. Like I didn't know that. I knew my mom was a narcissist, but I didn't know that that was trauma and that was something that you could heal from. And for me, it took having severe chronic pain to realize that like there's an emotional reason for this. And it took me like 4 months of doing the work for me to be out of pain. And that healing journey is ongoing. So I'm going on to 2 years of my healing journey, because I don't think there's ever a point where you're just like this magically perfectly healed unicorn, because life is going to keep throwing stuff at you and you're going to need to have some kind of tools to cope with everything. Otherwise, you're just going to go like, you know, you're gonna go nowhere if you don't have these sorts of tools, right? So I think it's very possible for anybody who wants to heal, obviously, to do the work and get on their feet again and be able to, you know, live life on their own terms and thrive and all that. It just takes that willingness to do the work and finding the right support group, right? Because there's some therapists who have no idea what narcissistic abuse is, and they'll try and like, you know, I've had like my own trauma from therapists just like minimizing my experience or telling me that like I'm too sensitive or whatever. And like, okay, so how do I stop being too sensitive? Like, does someone want to tell me? You know, like I had to figure that out all on my own. And it was basically from the chronic pain, I downloaded an app that like teaches you how to process your repressed emotions, and that's the solution for the pain. Like I had really bad migraines, TMJ dysfunction, neck pain, upper back pain, and trigeminal neuralgia. So that's nicknamed the suicide disease. So once I got to that point, that was my rock bottom. And that's when I discovered that there is a mind-body connection and that emotions matter so much, and that just like processing them is the key to healing. It's really hard to do that, right? It's not like you're going to decide one day, oh, I'm going to feel all my emotions and I'm going to be okay. No, it's a process. It takes several baby steps to like figure out how to be comfortable with emotions and all that. And if you've been raised by a narcissist, you've minimized the crap out of your emotions because you've been concerned about your parents' emotions your whole life. So I think it's absolutely, I forgot what question I was answering, but like I think it's so possible to heal if you want to. And if you have the right tools and the right support, like you can fly and it'll be amazing, and you don't have to let your trauma define you.
Okay, so go on, Deborah.
I was just going to add in terms of me being able to identify, as I said, that I knew that something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. I've heard the word narcissist, but I've never really looked at it. And I remember one night I went to bed and I was in bits, and I was in my bed and I got my iPad and I went on the iPad and I typed into the iPad, what does it mean when your husband tells you that you're fat and you're ugly? What does it mean? And then I put What's it mean when your husband says all these abusive things to you? And then it came up and says domestic abuse. And that was the first time that I realized that I was in a domestic abuse relationship. And I'd been in this relationship for how long? But I never identified it as being abuse. I thought he might have had a bad day and we had a disagreement, we had an argument, and it got a bit overheated and he was being a bit aggressive and a bit verbal abusive. But I never identified it as being abuse, domestic abuse, never. But when I realized it was domestic abuse, me being me, I've always got this savior hat on that I want to help people. I want to help you to get better. I want to help you to heal. So I stayed there, not that I was thinking to get out anyway, but I stayed there with the hope of trying to help him. What can I do to help him to be a better person?
Of course.
I mean, what can I offer him? What can I say to him? You know, so I remember coming home from work and he'd been made redundant by this time. So I knew there's a possibility he'd be at home. And I remember driving up, and as soon as I get onto my road, the panic in my chest, obviously I was going through panic attacks, I was having anxiety, and I was saying, please God, don't make his van be there. Let him be out, let him be out. Because I know that if he's out, I can come in and there's a bit of peace in the house. And the fact of the matter, there may not necessarily be an argument, it's just his presence.
Yeah.
Presence, just being there, not talking to me, ignoring me, walking past me, just crippled me.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a crippling experience. But I'm just so thankful, Jermaine, that I'm just out of this.
Of course.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolute crazy thought to think that an individual that says, you know, that would stand in public, and again, this is what makes it a show, isn't it? Stand in public and declare their love for you and their sort of undying intentions to grow old with you and all the rest of it, with a, could we say, like a different agenda, you know, a hidden agenda? Because would you agree that a narcissist, they would do or say whatever it takes in order for you to, I guess, give them whatever they want, whatever that is, you know? But of course, they're not going to say that to you, are they? But how do you then, as recovering sort of individuals from a narcissist, like how can you stop yourself from, I guess, going into another relationship with a narcissist? Like, is that even possible? Yeah.
Got the red flags early.
Yeah.
The goal is so high now. And for me, I was saying the other day, and Jermaine said I was sharing something with Jermaine a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
He was saying to me that's just such a powerful statement to make. And the statement was, that man has put me off men for life.
Yeah.
You know,
big statement. Yeah.
Because I just can't see myself getting involved with anyone else again. I just feel happy and contented with my healing and just doing me right now. Because I know the next person that comes to try and step over my threshold, the goalpost is going to be set so high, he ain't going to be able to change it. So it's best that I just do my own.
Yeah.
That's so important too. Like, I feel like, well, I wanted to add one thing too. I completely identify with what you said, Deborah, about the first time you realized, like, I remember Googling on my phone, is it normal that my partner calls me a bitch? And I was Googling it because I was embarrassed to like ask my friends or ask my parents, because then they wouldn't like him. You know what I mean? And so, and then I wanted to add as well as on kind of the red flags and how not to get into a relationship like that again. Number one, I love what you're doing in terms of focusing on your healing. Like, I feel like people should take as long as they need. Absolutely do not rush into another relationship. Focus on yourself. For me, which I feel like, again, Deborah, I identified so much with everything you were saying. Like, I lost sight of all my needs, all my wants, everything. And it was all about this other person and how can I make this other person happy? And if you have been in a relationship with a narcissist, I suspect you're probably feeling the same things. I would definitely recommend turning the focus to you, which is going to feel super weird at first, and you will likely need professional help with that. I see a counselor every single week, and it has been super helpful for me. But turn the focus towards you, get to know yourself, like, not to be mean, because I'm talking about myself here, like, get a life in terms of when you are with a narcissist, it's so time consuming and it's literally your entire life. Like, I'm not exaggerating, you don't have time for anything else, because it's like you're either fighting with them or you're walking on eggshells or you're trying to figure out how to make them happy. So you really need to figure out, like, wait, what do I even like? Like, do I
Yeah,
even like
course.
this person? And creating boundaries. Like, I had no boundaries. And if you go into the dating field with like no deal breakers, no boundaries, well, then nobody is going to strike out, because you literally have no standards. You're just like, oh, okay, you're a human? Awesome. Like, cool,
Yeah.
we're dating. It's like, you know, with each thing that happens, like, I literally sat down after this relationship and I wrote down a bunch of red flags, and I wrote down a few just since I knew that I would be on this panel. Like, one that I wrote down was if they're rude to wait staff. Like, that's something on literally the first date that like most people can't hide. Like, most people go out to eat on a date at some point. And I look back, and at the very first date, he was rude to wait staff, and literally every single restaurant, like, I remember feeling tension when waiters would come over to our table, because I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to be rude to them. And another red flag I wrote down was if you're with somebody that is talking with their exes, like if they have contact with their exes, unless they have a child with them, that's the one exception I'll make. Like, okay, whatever, people have to co-parent. But if they're just like, hey, I'm talking to this person from 7 years ago for no apparent reason, like, keep it moving. If they have different personalities around different people. So I wrote down my narcissistic ex. His dad is a preacher, like a Southern Baptist preacher in America. And around me, he drank every single day. Around his dad, he never drank. He literally was, my ex is like almost 35, was like, he hides alcohol, you know, like, he's just not able to be himself. So if you notice somebody is like, around one group of people, they're one way, around another group, they're another way, like, that's a red flag that they don't really have like a true identity and a true self, because, you know, they're around a bunch of different,
of course,
different masks. And if they're expecting you to do that as well, like, my ex would be like, no, we're going over to my parents, so like, no, you can't have wine. And I'm like, I rarely even drink. Like, if I want to have a glass, like, your partner shouldn't ask you to like not be yourself. And the biggest two that I wanted to mention were if somebody doesn't get empathy. So I found myself explaining, like, having so many conversations about like, no, I'm hurt, like, my feelings hurt. If you're explaining that to a grown ass adult, like a 35-year-old man, no, like, that's not a thing. I don't care what personality disorder or not that they have. That's just not something I should not have to be explaining to my partner. Like, why don't you care that I'm crying? Why don't you care that I'm sad? And the other thing that I really noticed was, like, are you compromising with this person, which is healthy. In healthy relationships, we compromise. Or are you always just doing what the other person wants? Because I was doing the latter. It wasn't just like, okay, like, we went where I want last time, so we'll go where you want. It was always like, no, we'll do whatever you want. And the biggest two that I wanted to mention were if somebody doesn't get empathy. So I found myself explaining, like, no, I'm hurt, like, my feelings hurt. If you're explaining that to a grown ass adult, like a 35-year-old man, no, like, that's not a thing. I don't care what personality disorder or not that they have. That's just not something I should not have to be explaining to my partner. Like, why don't you care that I'm crying? Why don't you care that I'm sad? And the other thing that I really noticed was, like, Also, if you find yourself in the beginning, like feeling like it's too good to be true, in my relationship, the first 7 months that I had with him, we never had a fight. Like, we never had a single fight. It was like, looking back, it was like, oh my gosh, this is so happy. That's not normal. Like, you should have conflicts. You should be able to argue with people. And you should ask yourself, is this love? Like, do I really even know this person?
Of course.
Or is it just feeling familiar? In my case, when I look back, there was a lot of unequal sharing. Like, I was opening up about myself a lot, which, by the way, was later used against me down the road.
They love doing that.
Yes, they like popped it in their memory. So 3 years later, they can bring that. But when I look back at it, I felt like I was like feeling closer to him and attaching to him, but I didn't even really know him. Like, he knew all about me.
Of course.
And that was making me feel bonded because here I am sharing my heart. But if that's not reciprocated, then you really should walk away, and you're probably dealing with a narcissist, because normal humans are like, here's a little bit about me. Okay, I'm going to share a little bit about me.
Yeah.
So those are
they do that though because they want to know your insecurities, so they can use that against you, and that they can just scrutinize you in any way they can, and they withheld information about themselves so that you can't do the same back. It's such a red flag. And have you ever come across, like, I don't know, have you ever dated or spoke to someone who's like a fake spiritual narcissist? Like, they make out they're spiritual as fuck, but they ain't. And they do that to lure you in, and they feed you all the bullshit. Sorry for my language. I've just recently come across one, that's why. And they literally lure you in. Oh my God, there was someone I was speaking to, his whole Instagram for the past 2-3 years, positive quotes that he's apparently made because his Instagram name's at the bottom of these quotes, right? But when it comes down to it, he is not this positive person he makes himself out to be. You know? And that is narcissistic.
So
I'm telling you.
I have to run, guys. I'm so sorry. I have a client in 5 minutes, so it was nice speaking to you all. I'm just gonna run. I'll watch the ending of this. So bye. Everyone.
Thank you very much for joining us. Honestly, pleasure. Thank you. Take care.
Can I just ask something that I got my glasses on.
Lorraine?
No, glasses on. Cordelia said.
Cordelia, oh yeah, right.
Yeah, sorry. And she was talking about empathy, and this man that I was married to totally lacked empathy. And I remember my mom passed away, so I had to fly back to Jamaica to go and bury my mom. So he came a couple of days later. He only came because my mom had put money aside for him. If she passes away, anybody who wants to come, money's there. So we paid for his flight and he came. And on the day of the funeral, I was sitting down in the church. He was next to me. My sister had her husband. My brother was with his wife. So my brother's wife was consoling my brother. My sister's husband was consoling her. And I was sitting like this, like I was sitting next to a total stranger. And he had a little camera in his hand. He was fiddling with the camera, and not once did he put his arm around me. Not once did he ask me, "Are you okay?" Nothing. When we got to the burial side now, the grave side, you know, I was in bits and my sister was in bits. And my brother had his hand on my shoulder. And would you believe that my brother literally called him over and took his hand and put it over my shoulder? Literally.
Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened.
No, it wouldn't have happened. Your wife is in pain. Your wife is, and it's like it was totally oblivious. He just couldn't even, I don't even know if he recognized or identified that I was crying. I don't know, because he has empathy. Oh, sorry, I thought somebody jumped in. Sorry. Yeah, he just couldn't empathize with anything.
Isn't that so scary? I feel like it's just so scary when you're with somebody like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have no trust in them, really. You almost kind of think, if anything, and one of the greatest panic attacks I used to have was that, I used to have a vision that I was in the house, he was in the house, I may be upstairs or downstairs, we're in separate places, and I've collapsed on the floor, and he does not know. And I used to visualize him coming up and seeing me and just walking out again, literally. And that used to really, really freak me to the fact that I didn't really want to be at home on my own if he was there. I was always happy that one of the children was here, just in case something happened.
Yeah.
And it's like his behavior actually drove me to start thinking that way.
Yeah, that's so, I feel like that's such an interesting point too, of like when you're talking about that, I'm thinking about how my body feels when I'm like around certain people. And when you were talking about him like being in another room, I was thinking back to like my body would tense up if I would pull up the driveway and I saw like the car was there. And I don't think I like recognized it at the time, but I feel like tuning into your body is important for like your body's trying to tell you something.
Yeah. But they
Yeah.
say that, don't they? They say if your anxiety acts up around certain people, then that's a sign. Stay away from them people, or find out why you feel that way about that person. Sometimes we don't even know why we're feeling like that. But
like Lorraine, with your mum, would you say that you felt that same sort of
all the time?
Yeah.
I remember every day coming home from school and knowing when I get through that door, she's going to do something. She's going to do something like. And I always used to try and avoid going home. So I'd go to people's houses and then I'd get kicked out of my home for going to a friend's house after school. Just stupid things like that. And I used to think I was like a really, really, really bad teenager because she would make me think I'm the worst teenager for not listening to my parent or getting a detention, things like that. So much more to it. But yeah, just these little things that are normal, but they make you feel like you're not normal, and they make you feel crazy. They make you feel like, you know,
right.
It's not a good feeling.
Yeah. Well, I think interestingly enough, there's actually Cordelia, even with you, like there's things that you've done to, I guess, start the healing process. And whether that's talking to a counselor, whether that's reading a book or downloading an app, or, you know, or again, just sharing your story. I mean, so it's you're still in the process of divorce, but you are already on your healing journey. How could we give, so sort of coming towards the end of this conversation, for those who are watching, and even just for those of us here, the scary thought that within our lifetime we could meet 100+ narcissists, you know, and not even know it, because sometimes they're so good until it's too late. What bit of advice, what could we say to someone listening and watching, you know, to help them either skip the narcissists, you know, watch out for those red flags and so forth, or if they are in that position where they're with one, whether it's a you know, a physical relationship or a relationship by blood or whatever it is, how they can get out of that. So if we each just sort of, you know, give our sort of closing points on those, I think it would be really helpful for individuals.
Yeah, so first, I think, like, again, focusing on yourself is going to be really important. So, and if you're still kind of in that phase where you're like, I don't know, I don't feel like I can do this, or maybe you don't know if you're being gaslighted, things like that, definitely start, like we recommended, recording conversations, listen to them later, and see if what actually happened. Reread your text messages. One tool that was helpful for me to leave the relationship, I wrote down like all the text that he had sent me for like the last 2 months. And so by the end of like the sheet of paper that I was writing it on, it was literally like there wasn't anything nice that he had said to me.
Wow.
And that visual really helped me to be like, oh wait, this is just like a page of hate. Like this isn't somebody I want to spend my life with. So tools like that can help you, or even a journal. Like let's say you get into a fight and like they storm off, writing down immediately after like what happened And that way, if later on they try to twist it around, you're like, no, I wrote this down when it was fresh in my memory.
Yeah.
So those are tools, like if you're considering, you're not really sure about leaving, definitely I recommend getting a counselor. I know in America, a lot of people, our health insurance isn't exactly the best. I actually posted like a resource of, it's like a document I made. It's in the link in my bio on my Instagram. But
yeah,
if you can't afford counseling, some organizations here, Open Path in America, they connect you with affordable counseling. Or like, let's say you literally have like $5, call the, I don't know if it's like this in England, but you can call like the universities or colleges or medical schools like around you in the area and ask for like the psychology department and ask if they have some kind of doctoral clinic. So like people getting their PhDs would be training to become counselors, and they would be supervised. But most of those places, I've literally talked to some people who have gotten sessions for $5 at those places. So even if you're like, absolutely just, I don't have the funds, I encourage everybody to get counseling, because it really is something that you need an objective person to talk to and that you're comfortable with, and that you're not worried about not disclosing the whole truth to. Like you're not worried about not telling your friends and stuff. Focus on yourself. Focus on how you talk to yourself. That was a huge thing for me. So I was realizing that I was with this person for so long and my self-esteem was so low. And I was, I was stuck in that thinking pattern of, if only I had done X differently, then this wouldn't have happened. And I was blaming everything on me. And so kind of taking note of how you're talking to yourself is super important, and actively trying to change those things. So instead of saying, well, this is all my fault, this divorce is all my fault, nobody's ever going to want to be with me, really challenging those thoughts and thinking like, I mean, I've dated other people before, so it's fair to assume other people are going to want to date me. And, thinking, is it really 100% my fault? Is that possible? Isn't it this person's, some of their fault as well? So really challenge how you're thinking to yourself. Surround yourself with support. I know with coronavirus, especially in America, because we've not done a great job at it. I'm still at least in my house here and social distancing, so it's a little harder now to connect. But reach out to friends that maybe you pushed away while you were in the abusive relationship, and just try to lean on people as much as you can, and go no contact. If you do have a kid with a narcissist, I always encourage the gray rock method, which is just making yourself as boring as possible, basically. And the last tip I would have is abandon the fantasy. Like throw it out the window, abandon the what if this person changes? What if we could have had this amazing life together? What if everything in between, and abandon the judgments of other people and just focus on reality. Realize that like this is your one life, and you can either spend it with this person in constant turmoil, or there is happiness on the other side. It's going to be really hard, and I don't want to downplay it for anybody. You're going to be sad. I cry some days still. Like, you're human. That's going to happen. You're going to be sad. But it's going to get better. Life's going to get better. And I encourage anybody to just start putting yourself first.
Perfect. I mean, that's definitely sound advice. Yeah, it's amazing advice, and I think for individuals listening, that's it's a lot, isn't it, to think that an individual has to think about so many things when it comes to any type of relationship. But I think in order to I guess stay on the right path, and away from a narcissist, and away from a relationship like that, is to definitely listen to those points. Thank you. Lorraine, do you want to go next, or Deborah? I don't know who wants to.
Oh, do you want to go first? I don't mind.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay. I would say probably set boundaries at the beginning, but like healthy boundaries. You know, if there's something you don't like and you've made that clear at the beginning, but they continue to do that, then that's a red flag. If, for example, I don't know, if someone's talking to their ex all the time and you're not comfortable with it because they've got no connections and it makes you feel, you know, doesn't make you feel right, then, and if they keep doing it, then that's a red flag. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a narcissist, because, you know, some people just like talking to their exes, but maybe, like you said, how they talk to a waiter or a waitress. I think how anyone talks to anyone who's not doing anything for them, like as in, I don't know how to explain that, but just how people talk to people generally, that's, if they treat people differently, that's a red flag. What else? If they, do you know what I always think? If I get to know someone and they go, oh, you know, I always attract crazy. Why do you always attract crazy? Because you make them crazy, you know? That's a big one. And there's so many red flags. Just if your gut, if something doesn't feel right, your gut does never fail you. That's what I believe. Like if you meet someone and something's telling you, "Ooh, there's something not right there." Normally people are like, "Oh, I want to give them a chance." Usually we like to see the good in people. Me especially, if someone's bloody done something in front of me, I'm like, "Oh, there must be a reason for that." But sometimes don't give them excuses. If someone seems like a bad person, maybe they are. You know, run for the hills. But with narcissists, I don't know, it's such a big subject and there's so many forms, and I would just say trust your gut always, and red flag. If it feels like a red flag, it's a red flag, and never settle. Never settle. But yeah,
I mean, you can't. No, exactly. I think that's perfect. And it's pretty simple, isn't it? There are times in which you do see red flags, but you do go against your gut feeling because you want to give that individual benefit of the doubt, or because you think, oh, you may be wrong or whatever. But I like that 100%. Definitely, you know when you know. So
I mean, oh, sorry, I'll speak.
Yeah, it's down to you. Yeah, go.
Yeah, for me, I think the first one, I think it's been touched on already, is to definitely set boundaries, you know. And the second thing for me is definitely self-love. You know, when you don't love yourself and you think so low of yourself and your self-esteem is so low, it's at rock bottom, you accept anything, you know. And there was a saying that says, if you don't fall for, what's the saying? You
don't stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything.
You don't stand for anything, you'll fall for it.
Yeah.
And that is so true. You know what I mean? When you don't have boundaries in place, the door is basically a jar for people to walk in and do and say exactly what they want to say. So for me, like I said before, it's about loving myself, putting myself first. You know, I love you, I love me more, you know? And
exactly.
So she's back now. So that's definitely. You know, I mean, and we have something called, which is very good, called women's intuition. If you get an inkling, because I saw so many little things that I knew that it was not right. I knew it wasn't normal. You've been in relationships before, so you know what is the norm. And when a behavior is not normal and you start accepting it, check yourself.
Before you wreck yourself.
Well, like I said before, why am I accepting that?
Yeah.
What is it about me allowing me to accept that behavior? What is not allowing me to stand firm and say, you need to go, you know, because we're just not good together? What stopped me from doing that? So the fact that I don't do that, or I haven't done that, has caused me years of pain. Whereas I could have stopped that in its tracks.
No, it's true.
All the pain would have not come, you know.
True.
You know, we live and we learn.
It's true.
Like I said, we're on a journey, we're on a new journey, and it's all about us. You know, I'm gonna be selfish now, and it's all about me.
Of course. I mean, that's perfect. I had if you guys will just give me a couple of minutes. I know that we've overstayed our welcome. Are you guys all right for a couple more minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got an individual that I connected to on Instagram as well. And again, just looking at different people's stories and all the rest of it. And she was actually meant to be on the panel, but I got the times mixed up and all the rest of it where she is. Anyway, she just wants to come in really quickly. So I'm just going to bring her in. And we've got the Narcissist Survivor with us now. No visuals. She's anonymous, so we are literally all ears. We've had what, an hour and a half conversation now without you. If you can hear me. No. Yes. Hello.
Oh my God, sorry.
I think she's coming through, but she's really doing some big things on Instagram at the moment to help you know, fellow narcissists, survivors and so forth. And even
Lala,
Cordelia.
let me explain. I can't cope. Is it her? Is it Lala, let me explain?
No, do you know what? Lala, let me explain was look, Lala, let me explain was actually going to be on this panel.
Oh my God.
But unfortunately, she couldn't because she can only get on after 9 because she looks after, like, she's got a kid. So
I mean, it's nearly 9.
Well,
I love her. She's literally the best.
she said unfortunately she can't do Wednesdays. So I said, okay, well, we're gonna have to do a live together, and so we're gonna do a live some point soon.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, no, she is. This is Narcissist Survivor. That should be the name. Okay, cool. Yeah, she's ready now. She's coming through again. Hopefully this time it works. But so far, honestly, all of you guys have been absolutely amazing with all the advice that you've given, and honestly sharing your stories has definitely helped people. I've literally just saw a couple comments come through already about people just going, oh my gosh, like this is one of the best episodes they've watched because it's just so much information. Hello.
Hi, Jermaine. Are you there?
I'm here. How are you?
Oh my God, pardon me, my apologies, my sincere apologies to everyone. We got our time zones completely.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, completely screwed up.
So what time is it there now?
It is now 12:44 p.m., just after lunch.
And where are you?
I am on the west coast of North America.
Right.
So Pacific time zone. I'm near Vancouver.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. I mean, to be honest, you've come through just as we were kind of giving our final statements about this topic. But I think, do you know what? I think you are such a professional that you can pretty much just within a few minutes just tell us about this subject, because obviously it's massive, I know, but you run a page, so if you just want to sort of tell us about a little bit about you, and I guess maybe, yeah, you as a narcissist survivor.
Absolutely. Obviously, I am a narcissist survivor. I have lived experience, obviously. Most of us do. Most survivors end up doing something to give back to the community in some way. My story is not exceptional, but I was the type of person that needed to figure out what was going on for me. So if you are ever out there Googling, you know, am I crazy, for example, that is the #1 sign that you are either involved with a narcissist or you're in an abusive relationship, period. So that was how I got started on my journey. I had 2 children with a narcissist. We all struggle. We've all gone no contact with him. And I ended up studying narcissism and everything that relates to it: childhood trauma, alcoholism, codependency. I know you have someone on discussing codependency today. My view is that being abused does not make a person codependent, but there can be some different comorbid traits going on as well, such as, many narcissists are also using alcohol and drugs, that type of thing. So it's really becomes a complex mixed bag of different things. And, usually narcissists are attracted to people who have a high level of empathy, and often put others before themselves, whereas the narcissist always puts themselves before other people. So, it's that opposing dynamic that's where the attraction often lies. So it is really easy for feeling and empathetic people to get trapped into that loop of overgiving, and then you're down the road and it's hard to get yourself back out again without, sometimes being really damaged at the end.
Of course. So your relationship with narcissists, you said, of course, you've got two children. How old are your kids?
They're older now. They're older teenagers. I have one daughter that just turned 20. So
okay.
They know a lot about narcissism now. They know a lot about abusive relationships. That's
Sure.
a conversation that people don't have very often with their kids.
No, that's what I was wondering. Yeah.
Right. And it is very important. A lot of people think, oh, no, you can't talk about the other parent negatively or something like that, which is true to a certain extent, except when there is abuse involved. If your kids and yourself are experiencing abuse at the hands of the other parent, that is definitely a conversation that needs to be had with kids. I did that for a long time. I covered for him. I saved face. But at the end of the day, kids know something is wrong. And if we're not having an age-appropriate conversation with them about violence, about what's going on, we're actually kind of gaslighting our kids. They need to know. And when they know, they tend not to repeat the same patterns in their own relationships.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. To the rest of you guys, I mean, is there anything that you wanted to sort of that we haven't covered already, or that you wanted to sort of push to her now?
Now, I enjoyed your perspective though about, we hadn't talked, I don't think, about anybody else on the panel about being a parent. So I don't have kids myself, so that's interesting to think about being a cycle breaker and, moving forward with that. So I appreciated that insight.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So in terms of surviving, and coming out, how did you actually, how did you break free of this narcissist? Like, is this something that was easy to do once you knew how?
Yeah.
Or?
No problem. No, I'm totally kidding. It was, and you have to laugh too, because it's really so tragic. Some, and it needs to be said that many women don't get out, to be honest. And by the time we end this call today, in the USA alone, there will be 4 more women that have died at the hands of an abusive partner. So some people don't get out, and people that do get out, they're very resilient and resourceful, but it can take everything that you have. I lost my house. Financial abuse is usually part of an abusive relationship. They will damage your kids. They will use parental alienation to try and turn your kids against you. There is any number of horrors that these types of people will perpetrate upon you even after you leave. It in fact sometimes gets worse after you leave, because the rage that comes from losing control over a person that you had under your thumb is it's very upsetting for them.
Yeah.
So, and this is when the craziness starts. So for myself, knowledge for me was the key to my recovery. And I spent far too much time reading everything under the sun that I could find, about narcissism.
Yeah.
And just having that knowledge and finally understanding that it was not me, it's a dynamic, it's a pattern of abusive behavior. That is when the light bulb started to go on for me.
Okay, and for those who are listening, the panelists that are on now, they've just shared their sort of things that they can look for, the red flags, for those individuals who are just going into maybe a relationship with narcissists, but also how do you get yourself out from the thumb of a narcissist? Could you share any sort of tips or any bit of advice about how well, I mean, you could speak firsthand about how you did it?
To me then, I feel like I'm talking a lot. Sorry guys, I'm like blah blah blah.
It's all you now. We've had our time.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, so the first thing I would say, the main red flag, aside from excessive charm is always a red flag, is love bombing. If somebody meets you and they want to marry you or move in with you, or have you buy them a car within the first week or two, like you're running off getting married, or you're their soulmate, or that is a red flag. That is love bombing. And that is the one trick that narcissists in particular use to trap you quickly, because they can't keep up their facade for a long time. So they need you to fall in love in 2 weeks, because that's about their time limit on when they can keep that mask on. Yeah. And I say 2 weeks loosely, but that is always, it's not your soulmate. If it's your soulmate, there's no rush. You don't need to be married in 2 weeks. Yeah. You have your whole life, theoretically, then, right?
Yeah.
Getting out. Sorry, I'm coughing a little because there's all the fires in California and all the way up the coast, and it's really smoky. So.
Oh, right. Sorry.
No, yeah, fine. No, we're trying to survive all this apocalypse over here too. I would say that the way to get out, if you're confused about your relationship, obviously if there's any physical abuse, that's major, that's a deal breaker, but it's all the other little things. The emotional abuse, usually you're going to be feeling some type of confusion. Confusion is a red flag. If you're confused about where you are, where you stand with this person, you can't have a conversation about it, red flag. How to get out? Everybody has a different journey. The average number of times it takes someone to leave an abusive relationship is 7 times. So it's different for everyone. Everyone will reach their rock bottom at some point. But what I always say is that the knowledge, if you're out there Googling, am I crazy or what's wrong with me? And you start coming across different things, narcissism, what abuse looks like, start looking up things like the cycle of abuse, intermittent reinforcement, love bombing, and having that knowledge start to come into your awareness will have that light bulb moment for you, because you'll be able to start seeing the patterns that are repeating in your own relationship. There's actually one book I'll recommend. It's called Why Does He Do That by Lundy Bancroft. Yeah. If I could only recommend one book ever again, that would be the book.
And that's called Why Does He Do That?
Yeah. And Lundy Bancroft is an expert in domestic violence. He's worked with violent offenders for many years, and he just takes you through the cycle of abuse, the different types of abusers. There's the playboy and the this one and the that one. It deals with narcissism a little bit, but not all abusers are narcissists, but all narcissists are abusers. So it's a fantastic book if you're
Brilliant.
struggling.
Brilliant. I think that's I mean that's plenty of. I've just looked at it now, and it's definitely rated highly. Have you guys again got anything else? I think what would have to do is I will have to either we'll go and come again with another chat in which we'll get the timings right next time, and we can go we can go for part 2 because it is such a big topic, or even still you know, we could easily do a live together or something, because I think there's a lot more of obviously your story and your journey and so forth that needs to be shared to all those, well, who are listening. But yeah, I mean, for now, I think what we will do is, unless there is anything sort of pressing that you wanna leave people with now, we'll kind of just round up and come again another time.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Brilliant. Yeah. 'Cause I think everything that everyone said so far has been absolutely amazing, and it's been from different points of views. And
I'm sorry I missed it. I really am. I was really looking forward to hearing everybody else as well. And again, my apologies.
No, honestly, not an issue. But yeah, this is still live, and the video will be available on YouTube. So of course, do have a look at that if and when you do get a chance. And when we do come for round 2, we can kind of just pick up where we left off, because I've just seen a couple more questions come through based on individuals who are watching this live. So again, once I get all of the kind of reviews and feedbacks and stuff back, it may be definitely worth doing a second one. But honestly, thank you guys for joining me, for sharing your stories. And I think, do you know what? It's crazy to think that you can be like, for instance, Deborah, you know, you can look a certain way, your relationship can be seen in a certain light from outsiders, but inside it's a completely different story. And I think, you know, it's fortunate that you did, along with yourself, Cordelia, and Narcissist Survivor, like you kind of look at, you took the, I guess, the incentive to ask those questions, and unfortunately it might be just Google that you have at the time to ask those questions too, but you know, nevertheless, you kind of then, you know, started questioning, and now you're actually on the journey of healing, and out of that relationship. And I guess my hope with this conversation is just whoever may be listening, either now or in 10 years time when someone clicks onto this video, that something that one of us would have said today would definitely have given them, I guess, the power or I guess the belief that actually I don't need to stay in this relationship, or I'm better than this, or, you know, to look out for those traps. So definitely thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So nice to meet all of you.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you guys too.
And you too. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.